So hello, everyone. After Reading Week, RESS released an anonymous mental health check-in form to all the members, trying to get a sense of how mental health and well-being is like for the engineering student body as a whole. This form has had an overwhelming response with over 200 responses in just 1 week. And with this data, RESS is really excited to welcome 3 special guests, professionals who can help answer your questions and talk about well-being before exam season begins. Okay. So the format of this event will be question and answer, and we will have 3 experts who can help direct and guide students to the right resources and provide advice. In today's agenda, we will start off with our panel introductions, and then we're going to move on with the topics, which are anxiety and stress, procrastination and time management, overthinking and comparing, resources and help, and sleep and eating habits. So what's going on, everyone? My name is Minna. I'm in my 3rd year in biomedical engineering, and I will be today's host.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm looking for my mute. My name is Juanita Camara, and I'm the Health Promotion Programs Coordinator on campus. I run the health promotion programs, and our mandate is to support student health and well-being. And you may have seen our team around. I have a peer program, the SHOP program. They probably would have been around campus if you've been there prior to this last year that we've had, but we do have a peer program that supports students' health and well-being. I'm very happy to be here and to share some information with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sean Carter. I am a behavior therapist or behavior analyst by background, but I work as a clinical manager currently at Ontario Shores Centre for Mental Health Sciences in our outpatient department. So I support people, support clinics that see people who come in from the community for mental health, various number of kind of mental health resources. And I also teach in the psychology program at Trent University. So hoping to offer maybe a little bit of kind of professor maybe perspective on some of the topics as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Holly Harris, and the perspective I bring to today's event is that of your peer. I am a post-secondary student. Right now, I'm a student at Mohawk College in their Research Administration Certificate Program. I also have an undergrad in psychology from Brock and a Master's of Arts in Critical Disability Studies from York University. I'm also someone with lived experiences of mental distress and lived experiences as a consumer of the psychiatric system. I have been a consumer of the psychiatric system for a long time, since I was 8, and I've been given the labels of generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and bipolar 2. I continue to navigate these experiences throughout my post-secondary education and academic career. And what I hope to accomplish today through sharing my experiences is normalizing conversations about our experiences with mental health to create a sense of community and promoting the idea that recovery is possible. And when I say recovery, I'm talking about a phenomenon called personal recovery, which basically means living a purposeful and meaningful life despite challenges associated with mental distress. And it's a non-linear journey that we're all on. We all have experiences of mental distress, some more or less frequent or more or less severe. And what has worked for me may not work for you. Our experiences, identities, and they're so unique and personal, and the way we address them must be as well. So rather than giving you a recipe for how to address distressing or uncomfortable experiences or feelings, I hope you feel empowered to try and find what works for you, and we can kind of garner a sense of hope. Right now, I work with Sean at Ontario Shores Centre for Mental Health Sciences as a peer support specialist. I leverage my lived experiences with mental health challenges to inform the planning, development, and delivery of mental health programming. And coupled with this lived experience, I use my academic and professional experiences related to mental health and critical disability studies to ensure the voices of the people who the programming is for, and those with lived experiences are at the forefront of its development and delivery. So thank you so much for having me today, and I'm so excited to engage in this discussion.
Thank you so much, panel. Okay, so we're going to move in with anxiety and stress, our first topic for today. So let's start off with the question: how to study while experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression. You're muted.
I'm used to not being muted, sorry. So I would, like I was saying, I will take this away, the first thing, and I will apologize to your audience because I have a 2-year-old who's gonna pop in and out of the picture with boo-boos. But the first thing I will say to someone experiencing anxiety and depression is, if it's really bad or if it's exacerbated, seek help. You want to start off by seeking professional help and at least having a support system, whether it's from your doctor or from a counselor, to help you through this. Because first and foremost, your health and well-being has got to be primal for you to be able to study. If you're not feeling well, if you're not doing well, all the strategies in the world are not going to work for you. So first and foremost, I will say that seek help. If you have not sought help in the past and you're struggling to do that for whatever reason, if it's a cultural thing, if you're uncomfortable, if you're worried about it being on your academic record, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I know sitting here and saying do it, it's not a problem, is very easy for somebody, especially someone who's not in your shoes. But I do want to say, please do it, because it will not go on your academic record. You're not going to get a transcript at the end that says passed but had counseling services or went to see a doctor. It doesn't go on that. It is not a reflection on you as a student either. We all have anxiety. Sometimes we all feel low, but sometimes we need professional help to get through it. So first and foremost, that's what I'll say, is reach out and get some professional help should you need it. Then I have a couple of things that I would suggest that you do. When you're looking to study, you do want to acknowledge your feelings, get an understanding of your feelings, in order to be able to respond to them. So it is normal to feel stressed and to feel anxious, especially in certain times like we are going through right now. So allow yourself to notice that and to express what you're feeling. And how you express what you're feeling is either sit down and talk to somebody about your feelings of anxiety and stress. What is it that's causing you stress and anxiety? Is it the fact that you don't have a study strategy? Is it the fact that you're behind in your notes taking, that you don't understand the content? What is it you're struggling with? So talk to someone about that. If you cannot talk to someone about it, write it in a journal. So make a note here, make a note there, so that you're able to again go back and reflect on what it is that is causing you the anxiety and the stress. And then, excuse me. So, and once you've done that, you're able to then address, if you like, the cause of it. So if you're stressed because you're, if you're anxious because you don't have the right notes or you don't have the right reading material, you're able to access that, and that should help to reduce your stress or your anxiety. The second strategy I would have is to adopt a routine, maintain an actual routine. So set out for yourself that during the times when you're studying, what is your routine going to be? I usually say to students, you know, when you're in school, you're 9 to 5, your job is to be a student. So schedule yourself out between 9 and 5 if you can. And within that time, put in your study periods where you're going to study, what you're going to study, the same way you would say, I have this class at this time and this class at that time. So start off by having a healthy routine that you can work through so that it doesn't increase your anxieties. So when you're stressed and anxious, sometimes it's because you think you're running out of time, you think you're not organized. If you organize yourself and you have a clear visual for where you're trying to get to and what you're trying to do, oftentimes that will help to reduce some of those stresses. The trick though is to stick to those regular schedules, right? Within your schedule too, factor in things like regular mealtime breaks so you can, you know, take a walk and connect with people, but structure your day in a way that allows for you to get work completed and you can visually see that you're getting work completed. And again, that should help to reduce some of your stress and anxieties. It goes without saying that really, really important to look after yourself. So take things one at a time or a step at a time within a day, and try to reduce things that increase feelings of being overwhelmed or increase your sense of control, something that allows for you to feel like, you know, you're in control of stuff. So things you might be able to do in this regard is, you know, eat healthy meals versus, you know, takeout. Eat regularly, exercise regularly, get sleep. Eat well. The other thing is try to avoid things like alcohol and drugs, because they do tend to increase, you know, things like stress, anxiety, and depressive moods. Really, really important to stay connected to people within your sphere. So connect with family, with friends, either through phones, video chat, social media. If they're within your home, schedule times for you to sit down and actually chat about your day and how things are going. When we talk to other people about our thoughts and our feelings, it does help us to find ways to cope with stressful situations. So try as best you can to maintain some of those relationships. But like I mentioned, in doing all of that, you want to be able to balance the work that you have to do with having a good time. So increasing things that, recharge you or make you feel positive and make you feel grounded is really good. So regular breaks that boost your productivity and energy. So things like engaging in meditation or having a workout, reading a book, anything that helps you to unwind so that when you go back to learning, it's less difficult for you. But the most important thing, like I said, is if you find it difficult to even apply any of those strategies, seek out help, because it may be a little bit more than you're able to cope and manage on your own. And certainly there are people who are out there who can help to support you to do these things. But yeah, really strategies for addressing anxiety, especially at exam time, is to have a clear visual for what you're trying to do, so you can see what you've accomplished and the achievements you've had. Those will make you feel better, and they'll reduce the feeling of being out of control.
Wow, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Routine.
Routine, yeah. Have a routine and stick to it. You don't have class now, you have study time, and so plug it in that way. And I also encourage students, I know we all use tech for a lot of our stuff and we have calendars and everything. I also just tend to encourage my students, if you can, have a paper copy that you can put up, or that you can, there's something to be said about putting a tick as compared to clicking a box to tick. Putting a tick or crossing out to say I've achieved this, it makes you feel good. But when you have something on paper, it also allows for you to see it and to touch it, and it's in your sphere all the time. So not many trees should be killed, but at least a page should be printed to see what your schedule for the day or the week is. There you go.
Definitely implement all of this in my studying, especially because exams are coming up. So thank you for that. Now moving on to the next question. How to deal with test and performance anxiety.
Yeah, so maybe I can help field this question. I have definitely been a person who has struggled with test and performance anxiety throughout high school and my university career, and actually had some really uncomfortable and inconvenient physical symptoms related to test and performance anxiety. And on one hand, anxiety can be beneficial. It's a beneficial, normal, natural response to things, and it means something's important to you. But there is an optimal level of arousal that can actually help improve your performance. So maybe a little bit of anxiety is okay. But if we exceed this optimal level, it can actually hinder our performance and be really, really uncomfortable. So in other words, if the anxiety is harder than the test, then maybe it's good to have some strategies up your sleeve to kind of address these feelings. So I have a background in psychology. So there's a really complex concept that I'm going to boil down into a way that made sense to me. So throughout evolution, we're going to go all the way back there. We started with like a reptilian brain, and this was really just a fight or flight response. And then over time, throughout evolution, we developed this mammalian brain that has all those cognitive, complex processing powers and things like that. When we are anxious beyond that optimal level, we only have access to that reptilian brain, that fight or flight response. And as you can imagine, reptiles don't do great on complex exams. So it's important that we have that cognitive processing power with that mammalian brain. So the way I think of it is you got to flip your cap to kind of reduce that arousal so you can engage that mammalian brain and really answer the questions on the exam using all those complex cognitive processing powers that our brains have. So there's a couple of things that have worked for me to flip my cap. One of the things that has been really helpful for me, and I know we hear it all the time, is focusing on your breath and being mindful about your breath. I heard this quote a couple weeks ago, wherever you go, there you are. And wherever you go, your breath will be with you. It is a wonderful constant. So no matter where you are, what you're doing, you can always focus your attention back on your breath. And this can help kind of reduce that arousal. And one thing that I recognize is I'm still going to be able to take breaths after this exam, no matter how it goes. So that can be really helpful as putting things in perspective. And just in line with that idea of putting things in perspective, one test, one grade does not define you. I can tell you my undergrad was not that long ago, but I cannot tell you a single grade that I got on a single exam. So really think, is this going to matter in a year, a month, a week? One grade does not define you. And again, going back to that, wherever you go, there you are. Your head and your mental state and yourself is going to be with you long after this exam. So it's so valuable to invest time and energy in making sure that's okay. The last thing that I'll mention that is actually a relatively new concept to me that I found helpful is tapping. And it's really about stimulating different physical parts on your body while thinking uncomfortable thoughts and realizing that they're just thoughts, but the physical world is still there around you. So I found that helpful. Again, what works for me may not work for you, but I hope that a couple of these ideas, maybe they'll work for you, or maybe it'll encourage you to find what does.
And if I can add what I consider to be a funny story as an example, when you mentioned one grade doesn't make or break your career. I teach specifically behavior modification at Trent. That happens to be, I went to Trent. It happens to be the lowest mark I ever got in university, and told myself I will obviously not ever become a behavior therapist. Not only did I become a behavior therapist and have worked in that field for the better part of the last 15 years, I teach that course at Trent University. So they took a big leap of faith, but if anything sort of speaks to an example of one grade not making or breaking, I just thought I would share. I wasn't going to say that, Holly, but when I heard your example there, I thought I would share that just as a tidbit.
That's perfect. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
If I can also just share, everybody has a story, right? So why not share I failed in university. I actually got a whole E, like an E, and I never get E's, which is not to say I'm an A student either, but I never got an E. And all the way, you're talking about test and performance anxiety. All along the way, I knew this was coming. I knew the whole thing about the exam just made me uncomfortable. The content, the studying, the preparation, everything. I knew it was coming because I set myself up for it. I feel, anyway, this is in my case. By the time the exam came up, I had psyched myself into thinking that I'm gonna fail anyway. So, and I had this entire mind block. And of course, I went ahead and I failed. And then I had to sit with that for a little bit. And I had to have that honest conversation with myself around, okay, now what? Because it happened in my third year. And as we all prepare for our masters and our third years, our GPA is really important. We now worry about, and it bumped my GPA from like a 3.7 something down to like a 3.0. And I'm like, what am I gonna do with myself? But you sit with that and you have to learn from that. And I think part of what I'm trying to say is every experience should be a learning for the next thing. And Holly, I absolutely agree. Slight anxiety and slight stress about something is a motivator for you to get to the next piece. But going through something like this is also the thing that helps you gain the tool and the experience for how to respond the next time. The next time it happened to me was in my licensing exam. I'm sitting there, first question was a calculation for drip rate, and I couldn't even tell you how many drip rate calculations I'd done by that point. Couldn't for the life of me figure it out. And I sat on this question for like 20, 30 minutes, and I had another 180 to go through in an hour and a half, and I froze. You kind of go back to that. I'm like, okay, take a moment. That your breath is where you are. I literally breathed myself through this process of just get over this. If you can't answer it, it's okay. Just go to the next question. You can come back to it, get over it. But test anxiety is real. You just have to get those coping skills and do the thing that you need to do to kind of reboot your mind. And breathing works. Like seriously, I was like, 1, 2 breath in, you got this. 1, 2 breath out, you have this. 1, 2 breath. You have to have that self-talk within yourself. But test anxiety, everybody goes through it. And if you don't do so well, you know what? Learn next and learn from that, and you won't do the same thing the next time. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, next question. If I am having a hard time with adjusting to online learning, what would you recommend to cope with these situations?
So I'm happy to try to, I guess Holly and I had both kind of wanted to speak from this, and I think we probably offer two very complementary but different perspectives. So Holly, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Go first, that's fine.
Okay, sure. So I just wanted to just kind of validate that, you know, as someone who's been a student, as someone who sort of works in the mental health field, and someone who teaches at kind of the university level, that everyone is struggling with this right now. This is not sort of a phenomenon that's unique to students or unique to one particular kind of type of job or type of kind of experience. This is something that everyone is struggling with, but is particularly difficult when you've had to sort of really shift the entire way that you learn. And of course, we've all been used to kind of maybe smaller little components of having to either do our work or learn in virtual settings. But everyone is struggling with this. And at the university level, this, you know, obviously this is you all as students, it's the professors, they're having to sort of take all the information and deliver it in a totally different way. The TAs are struggling, everything that goes into, you know, supporting students is different and having to do that sort of online. So knowing that you're not alone and to reach out to people who are in a similar situation. So, you know, you might have developed your own strategies of how you've coped over the last year with kind of the online learning, but reach out to other people because everyone has developed their own toolkit, even if it's just sort of like, you know, if it's, you know, gum and paper clip type strategies that they've just sort of pieced together over the last year. Some of those sort of really, really simple strategies are what get people through. So talk to people who are in a similar situation. You probably have hundreds of other people who are really experts like yourselves who can kind of help each other through these situations. So that would be the first thing I would suggest. I would say as soon as you get your syllabus right now, like normally your syllabi probably look similar, a similar sort of layout, similar types of assignments possibly, but really sit with that syllabus right from the beginning. And identify where am I going to struggle if I'm doing X, Y, and Z now from an online perspective. What are the areas I will predict I might struggle with, and build that into and factor in that extra time that might take when you're planning. So like Juanita said, when you've got that paper schedule up in front of you, make sure you've actually factored in the extra effort and time it's going to take to do this in a virtual way. Whether it be a group assignment where normally you could just get together after class and talk in the lobby or whatever, talk in the library, maybe not loud in the library, but talk in the library. Now you're having to sort of set up Zooms and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of keeping in mind that most things right now are taking people longer. So to kind of prepare ahead of time for that. Be mindful to kind of craft a workspace that's conducive to virtual work. So, you know, in the past, I would imagine you're either spending most of your day commuting to school, you know, and all those types of things, and your workspace ends up being wherever you are. So maybe it's your, you know, sitting on your bed sometimes, maybe it's maybe you have a desk and you're able to sit there, maybe it's your couch, maybe it's the bus on your way to school, maybe it's you know, the library or a little nook that you find somewhere at school. But given you're kind of likely planted in one place for the majority of your learning experience, really be mindful of the space you have around you. Like, is it chaotic? Is it organized where the things you need are there? Are there things you could put up that could remind you to kind of focus on the things you're focused on? What's that end goal? And don't think too big picture. Like, what's my goal today? What's going to get me through what I need to get through today? Be wary of Zoom and virtual fatigue. I think so many of us are really struggling with that. And where I find it hits me the most is when I try to apply, like I try to connect with people socially, like family and friends outside of work, like when I'm at home. And even that has to be in a virtual sort of platform. And then I find myself really exhausted by having to stare at a screen, either looking at myself or like doing everything through a screen. So be mindful of that and think of maybe other creative ways that you can connect with, with the people you love and the people who are important to you. Given you have to spend so much of your time kind of doing everything virtually anyway, looking at taped lectures or live recorded lectures, those kinds of things. But really, to kind of piggyback on that, like really lean on the people who are important to you and find kind of creative ways to connect with them as well. So those are just kind of a few examples, and I'll let Holly kind of add her experiences and any suggestions she has too.
Yeah, Sean, I loved everything you said. And I just, like you've both spoken about the importance of a schedule and a hard copy schedule at that. And I can completely agree with that. I found that really, really helpful for me. And I love a hard copy schedule because I can use gel pens and stickers, which I love. So yeah, Menel, you like too? Okay, great. So one thing that I can say is a benefit to online learning is we can so it's important to dedicate time and set a schedule and things like that, but you can set a schedule based on when you work best. So you don't have to get up for an 8 a.m. lecture anymore. If you like, my prime time to work is between 11 and 2. So we're kind of in my sweet spot right now, actually. So schedule watching your lecture then. So it's really great that we have this flexibility to schedule around when works best for us. One thing that I can say is, just to echo what you said, Sean, online learning is not what we are prepared for and not what we expected. So have some compassion for that. This isn't what we expected out of our university experience, and it's normal to feel a sense of loss and grief over that, and anger, and be really kind to yourself during this time. Just as it is important to schedule time to work, it is important to schedule time for breaks, and being really intentional about these breaks. Maybe mindlessly scrolling through Instagram or TikTok isn't the most conducive to feeling better and rejuvenated when you go back to work. So be intentional about what rejuvenates you. And maybe it is looking away from a screen at a hard copy book or something like that, or going for a walk, looking at something other than a screen, can be really, really helpful. And one thing that I also wanted to mention, Sean, you're a professor, and like you said, professors spend months, even years, developing curriculum to deliver in person. And at the drop of like a day or two's notice, they've had to go online. So it's important to not only have compassion for yourself, but have compassion for those around you. We're all doing our best. No one knows how to navigate this situation. So just really cutting everyone some slack is really my advice.
Yeah. If I could also just add my 2 cents there. Everything that everybody has said is true. I will also just add, for the caregiver, the parent, the child, everybody. The beauty of being on site is you leave the caregiving at home, or you take it somewhere else and somebody does that for you, so you can focus and concentrate on this. As you can see, you have to work with the distractions sometimes. This is a lot easier to do than trying to study and take in information or try to write an assignment kind of thing. So again, recognizing that some of you are parents, you're taking care of children, you're taking care of family members, or you're even taking care of yourselves. On top of all of this, people with disabilities are also experiencing extras in situations like this. So one, there is the compassion piece. The other piece, in terms of your experience that has drastically changed because you can't tag out, if you like. I think that only other things that I would add to what everybody said is, don't give up things you would have done on site because it's online. So take advantage of office hours. Professors still continue to offer virtual office hours, either by email, conferencing, that kind of stuff. So take advantage of them, especially if you're not doing well. Connect with your faculty advisor and keep them abreast. Always, 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 I think professors will try to accommodate or give you time or guide you or help you in some way, but they can only do that if they know. So stay in touch and take advantage of office hours. And when you do meet with them, clear, specific questions are usually good. So take the time to craft out what it is you're going to see them about. Having a bit of a hard time with what are things, can't really help you with that. You kind of have to be more specific about, and some of it will be uncomfortable because it's personal. But if you do require help with it, or that support, certainly talk to them about it, because they may know of resources that you do not know, but they can also only accommodate you academically if they're aware. Going to a professor after a due date and saying, well, I needed more time, it's a little bit harder than, as compared to talking to them prior to that. So that's the one thing that I would say. The other thing, I think everybody mentioned it, is, again, continue to check in with your professors to make sure you have the right assignments that you have done in terms of getting your work done. Organize your coursework into individual folders if you can. I think at home, or when you're working from home, you tend to have like an actual physical binder, and some of us may not have physical binders anymore. So create actual desktop folders so that you know which folder you're going into for different subjects. Don't put it all in one. Don't have a third year thing and put everything in there. Within your third year folder, have the individual courses with their own folder, and then otherwise things get messed up and they get lost. I'll go back again to try stay as organized as you can, schedule as much as you can, make it as visual as you can often, but talk to your professors if you're struggling. I cannot say that enough. Nobody can help you if we don't know. So talk to them, and nothing is too small. Rather have them say, you know what, that's silly, this is how you fix it, than for you to not reach out and your silly is actually a big thing. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually been going to office hours recently. I've never used to go before. Yeah, and it's super helpful. But yeah, I'm definitely trying to reach out for help, because online learning, it's like you don't have the professor right there to ask them. You have to like actually go out of your way and go for it. So thank you for that. Now moving on to the next category, procrastination and time management. This screenshot is actually taken out of the form. So as you can see, YouTube, TV, Netflix, that's like the most popular way of procrastination. So I'm just going to move on to the questions now. How to avoid guilt from not being productive, and how to deal with the fear of not securing a co-op job.
Yeah, so I find this question actually quite interesting, especially around productivity. My question is, what does productivity mean? Where does this definition come from? I would actually argue that investing intentional time in yourself is a worthwhile investment and is productive in itself. So again, it may not be helpful to sit on your phone and go through TikTok and things like that. Maybe that is not conducive to your wellness, but focusing on our attention on other elements other than school or work that nourish our well-being, I would argue is not unproductive. It is very productive. School is not forever. Your wellness is. So school is really important. As humans, we crave knowledge and success, and it can be a really logical step in achieving our goals. And having high expectations can be great and drive us to work hard and move forward. But it's really important to critically look at your expectations. Where do they come from? Are they realistic? Would you expect the same of a friend? And it's really important to make sure that your high expectations are driving you to try harder and not making you feel bad. So I would, just to wrap that up, I would say, let's challenge our definition of productivity and prioritize balance between investing time in ourselves and investing time in our work.
Maybe what I could add, dealing with the fear of not securing co-op and a job. I think everybody is frightful right now. We're in uncertain times. Any other time than now, you may not even have thought about this, or at least not to the extent that we're all doing right now. What do co-ops look like at the moment? What does a job look like at the moment? Can we continue to do? And again, what I will say, the same way universities have had to pivot to find new ways of teaching and moving curriculum forward, a lot of the places where students are typically placed have kind of had to do that too. They know you cannot come on campus, but they do I don't want to say they rely on students. Some programs in some areas certainly do rely on student placements to help facilitate the work that they do, and not all of them, but they have an understanding of the fact that they cannot deliver the same support to students as they would in any normal time. So they've also kind of adjusted and pivoted as best you can, depending on the field and the industry you're in. But what I will say when it comes to this sphere is, continue again to do the things you would normally do if you were on campus. Lean on your program advisors, lean on the co-op offices. They will be able to provide you the information that you need to continue to do some of the work required to secure placements. And if you do not, again, it seems like a catastrophe. It really not always is. The school will do the best that they can to find you a placement. I really don't think, and I mean, if this happens, I would be incredibly surprised, but I really don't think the school will say, it's all on you. If you can't figure it out, well, too bad. The school will help you secure some of these placements that you need to get in order to move forward with school. So yes, I know it seems scary. Yes, I know it seems very uncertain right now. Vaccines are here. With vaccine, hopefully we're seeing a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel. And this may only be a fall concern, potentially a winter concern too, but things will land. Lean on the services that are there to support with things like securing a job and a co-op. If it is a job moving out to the career center, they have support services for you. The alumni services, they have support services for you as well. Lean on them. That's why they're there.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So next question. What are some tips to prevent studying at the last minute and manage time better?
So one strategy that has worked for me, I noticed that marathon study sessions can be quite satisfying in the moment. Maybe like I just studied for 12 hours, but they're exhausting and make you never want to do it again. So then you need a week or two break before you kind of get back into the rhythm, and then it happens again because there's another due date. So again, just going back to what we've been kind of hammering home through this discussion, is scheduling is so important into manageable chunks to avoid falling into this vicious cycle of marathon studying. It makes it really sustainable and conducive to well-being. So again, like little chunks helps develop lifelong habits and develop a lifestyle rather than having these marathon study sessions.
If I could, again, just add, I think when you look at tips for studying about last minute, you have to look at the larger thing, which is preparing for exams. Part of preparing for exams is, studying and study habits. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, schedule, have a study plan. If you can develop a study plan and use the 2 weeks before your exams, or even longer if you can make it a little bit longer, if you can use that to implement your study plan, that way you will avoid, the cramming, the last minute cramming. When it comes down to, I'm looking at your name and I'm drawing a blank. Sean, I wanted to call you Scott. I don't know why I'm calling you. You may be able to speak a little bit better to this, but memories encoded when the older they are and the more you sleep, of course. Anything you learned last week, you're more likely to remember than anything you learned the night before an exam. So you want to take that time to give your brain a chance to encode, sit with it and remember it so that you can kind of pull on it a little bit later on. But I do think it all really starts with a study plan. Within your study plan, you plot out what you're studying, when you're studying it, and you're then able to prioritize stuff you need to pay more attention to versus others, because there is some content that is really a lot more brain heavy, learning heavy than others. So when you plot it out, you're able to see where you need to make some of that focus, put some of that focus. But I really, really do encourage you to try and study ahead of time, because cramming and last minute learning, look, even if you do remember it for the exam, you also kind of need to remember that your whole academic career, the 4 years that you're in there, everything you're learning is supposed to be something you can apply to your profession when you leave. It's not going to help you to not remember what you learned just because you crammed it, 24 hours before an exam. So while you might sometimes get a good mark from cramming the night before, I really don't discourage it, because you're supposed to be learning in order to engage and encode the work you're doing, and not for exams. I know exams are the things that assess and evaluate us, but your learning really should be about your profession later on, and not how to take an exam now.
That was so well said. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, marathon study sessions out of the way. Now moving on to our next topic, overthinking and comparing. So we're gonna start off with the question, how to stop overthinking and repeatedly replaying a scenario in your head.
So, I mean, I'm happy to speak to this, but welcome anyone else's thoughts too. I just want to start by saying this is just a normal human experience. This is something we all do at some points in our life, or more times than others. But one of the most important things that I find is helpful in these types of scenarios is the idea of locus of control. It's the idea of kind of being really clear on what is within your control in that moment, and what is something that might actually just be happening to you, that the environment around you is causing something to happen, like COVID. So we can be really hard on ourselves and blame ourselves for anything that might be going on right now, but it's really important to remember we've got this huge thing that's happened to us in the last year. So it's really important to kind of try to think in that moment, is this even something right now that I can control? Or is this just going to be here forever? Or is not COVID? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I even said that in the same sentence. But is
Bite your tongue.
Sorry.
Bite your tongue.
I mean, like the emotion we're feeling, or the thing that's happening to us right now. COVID is not a good example. Is that something that's just going to persist, and we have to figure out a way to sort of get past that? So, if it is something you can control, I'll talk a little bit about some platforms that are available later on, but a really helpful set of tools are cognitive behavioral strategies, or cognitive behavioral therapy type strategies. And a really helpful one that I don't always, there's lots of different ways to sort of articulate how you use this strategy, but Holly was sharing in her experience, this one has been helpful, is the idea of the whole catch it, check it, change it type strategy. Again, lots of people look at this in kind of different ways, but I'll kind of stick to that framework when I'm sharing how that might be helpful in these scenarios. Is spot, so the catch it component is be able to spot in that moment that you're feeling anxious. And a really good way to do that is to use your emotions as cues. So personally, I know when I'm going to catch that moment where I'm feeling a certain way, it's usually irritability. That's the thing I noticed in myself, and feeling overwhelmed. Those are two emotions that often allow me to sort of stop. And I don't do this well every time. I'm not perfect, but there are moments where when I am able to catch myself, where what I notice are those two kind of emotions creep up. And if you can notice it creep up, you can catch it right away. Most humans, if they get too far down that chain and that cycle is just sort of recurring and recurring, it's really hard to stop it when you've reached that point where you're just so overwhelmed or so irritable or so upset or sad or down. So it's important to kind of catch those types of emotions really early. The check it is, is this even really true? Is what I keep thinking about and what I keep kind of replaying in my head even true? Is this belief I have about maybe someone not liking me or thinking negative thoughts about me, like, do I actually have evidence that that's true? Do I have any evidence to support that that's actually true? And also kind of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, would I be sort of reinforcing this if someone else was telling me that's the way they were feeling? Like, what would I tell my best friend who told me that's what they're thinking? I probably have really good strategies to help them out, and not always the best strategies for myself. So what I will say though is that the check it thing is probably the hardest part in all of this. It's very hard. We often believe that our thoughts are true. We just assume that if we're thinking it, it must be true. And while thoughts are very valid, it's important to note that, like, they're very important. They're not always true, and to kind of remind yourself of that in the moment. I might be thinking this, but is it really actually the case? And then the last piece is the change it component. And really the ultimate goal there is to substitute those thoughts you're having with something more realistic, something that is based in fact and truth, not these things we're kind of imagining might be true. And so an example would be like, if you're thinking, if it's related to an assignment, like I'm just never going to finish this. I'm never going to finish this assignment. It's never going to happen. Replacing that with, I just need to make a plan to make this happen. I just need to sit down and really think about how I'm going to do this, rather than thinking of, I'm just never going to be able to finish this. And really the key with all of this is that it takes practice. You have to do this 100 times before it's going to work. This isn't one of those skills that you try once and it works and then you're going to have it forever. This is something that really, really takes practice, especially when it has anything to do with thoughts. Often thoughts are just automatic. They come and they go, and we often can't control them very much. So it takes a lot of practice to sort of recognize that one's happening and sort of substitute it in that moment. So that's what I might offer as kind of a some strategies around this one.
Catch it, check it, change it. I wrote it down, so thank you. So moving on to the next question. How to avoid comparing yourself with other people?
So a little bit of a difficult question to answer, so I'm going to try the best I can. I think I will start by saying that, again, similar to what Sean was just saying earlier, I think it's human nature to compare yourself to other people. We do that all the time. She is, he is better than me, faster than me, prettier than I am, etc. We kind of do that all the time. I think the most important thing to remember, though, is if you look at yourself and how you present yourself to the world, you'll almost always realize that if it's on social media, as an example, you always put up your best pictures or your best moments. They don't necessarily mean that your whole life is like that clip that you're seeing in front of yourself there. So in terms of things like life experience and other people having fun, try not to compare yourself, because you don't know what's happening in other people's lives. You only see what they present for you, and that being the best image that you're seeing. I think in terms of school and academics, look, I have been out of school for a minute, so things might be a little bit different. I remember when we would get our papers back and everyone's like, oh my God, I got this for my mark. I got this for my mark. Again, people learn differently, people test differently. I may get brilliant multiple choice exam marks, but it may just be that I know how to take a multiple choice question. I've learned how to take multiple choice questions, and not necessarily, well, there's an element of knowing the content, of course, but with things like assignments, exams, tests, etc., coupled with knowing the content, it's also knowing how to take the assessment that you're being given, how to write a good essay, how to take a good multiple choice question, multiple choice exam, how to take a good short answer exam. Those are skills you can learn and you can build. If you find you're not as good as others, if you're comparing yourself, it really may just be a lack in skills. So find ways to get those skills. Certainly the student learning services, support services can help you with, learning how to take exams, how to take papers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Also remember that we all have different levels of, I don't know if intellect comes into it, but we all absorb and regurgitate information differently. Some it's easier, for others it's not really as easy. My mantra through university was one course at a time versus the degree. If you focus on the big degree, it's a lot harder. If you focus on passing your course and just being engaged in the course that you're in and getting through that, you're gonna come out a lot better. Same thing, I mean, I'm a nurse. I graduated as a nurse. If I look at my colleagues around me, there are some who are CEOs, there are some who are still working on wards, and I shouldn't even say still, because working on a ward is not a bad thing. Being a CEO is not the best thing. It's just that people have different directions and different passions that they have. So you land where you want to go. So rather than compare yourself to what other people are doing, why not just sit back and say, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? And start, planning that path. If there's someone who is where you want to go, have a conversation with them around how do they get there, and see if, it makes sense to kind of follow. These are what you call the professional interviews. See if it makes sense to kind of follow the same journey that they did to get to where you might aspire to be. But I would say, as best you can, do not sit and look at the person on your left and the person on your right and say, well, they are X than me, because one, you don't know what's happening in their lives. Two, you're brilliant and amazing all on your own. So, you know, it's that whole love and be compassionate and caring for yourself. And three, there's things you can do to move forward, right? So find ways to get to where you want to go to, and make it your path. Because I promise you, aspiring to be a CEO, when you get there, it may not be the thing that you want to do. But if it's really what you want to do when you get there, it will be amazing. So your own journey is really where you want to focus your efforts on. And I'll go back to my example. I like the work that I do. In terms of, if I were to compare myself to other people I graduated with, there are some who are making easily $20,000, $30,000 more than I do. But you know what? I love my job. I engage with students. I get to work Monday to Friday. I have my benefits, and all of that to me was so much more than the extra $30,000 that other people are making. Having said that, other people want that extra money and it works for them. Kudos to them. Yay, great. Just don't compare yourself, because I mean, there's so many things you don't know about what other people are going through and what other people are doing. Also, I will say in terms of placements and jobs, especially for placements, sometimes you get placed in places you don't want to be. You know, you don't think it meets the career path you want to go on. You don't think it's challenging enough. Or again, you hear about things that other people are doing and they're like, I'm doing this, you know, and it's, you know, try not to do that either, because really most placements or co-ops are about learning. So get as much learning from that as you can, because all of them are selected and designed to allow for you to learn. So make the most of the learning that you're getting in that placement. Don't worry so much about what other people are doing. What you should be saying is, well, you're doing that, but you're not doing what I'm doing, because they're not doing what you're doing. So let them want to be you rather than you wanting to be them. So I'll just leave it at that.
That was so well said. Thank you for that. Okay, so moving on to resources and help. I'm going to start off by asking this: when is the right time to go seek professional help?
So I'll keep this one short and sweet, because personally, my opinion is that we should all probably always be seeking help. Like, I think that's something that should probably just be part of our everyday repertoire, is not being afraid to ask for help, no matter how small or big the issue is. But I would suggest, again, like I said before, don't wait till things get so out of control where you feel like, you know, there's either shame or guilt, which should not be happening for any of these types of concerns related to your wellness. But don't wait until it gets so bad. Like, really try to ask for help early on, because we know that things can escalate very, very quickly. So really seek support early on. And seeking help or seeking professional help could look really, really, like, take lots of different types of forms. What I suggest is just start with kind of a friend, a family member, a trusted coworker, a trusted sort of student, like a peer, and just talk to them. And sometimes just the act of sort of getting it off your chest can sometimes be enough on its own. So and not always, but sometimes that's enough to at least help you feel a little bit better, and maybe give you a bit more motivation, and ask for their support in kind of looking for additional help outside of that. If that's not working and helping enough, then, you know, most of us, if you don't, then sort of see if you can sort of get support from kind of your local hospital or local kind of agencies in the area, or through your school. But potentially go to your family doctor and kind of share some of what your concerns are, if you are lucky to have a family doctor. Maybe do some online research about some of the challenges you're having. What I would caution you, though, with online research is be really careful about the types of information you're finding, because I would go to kind of reputable sources. So whether they're local or kind of, you know, outside of this area, there will be some resources, I know, Mena, that you're going to be kind of including in a package, and some of those are kind of more general resources where that's where I would go for kind of some of that trusted information, rather than just sort of Googling, you know, what does depression feel like. You might get some good, you probably will get some good information from that, but it's, you know, when you're at the peak of needing support, you don't want to have to try to spend so much energy figuring out, is this accurate, is this not accurate, and you don't want that to make things worse. But sometimes a little bit of research can be helpful. Depending on, like, you know, ask people for support. If you know that someone struggled with something similar, ask them what they've done in the past. But really, at the end of the day, what's most important is your well-being and your safety, and that would be sort of the non-negotiable element. Like, ask for help all the time, small or big issue. But if you're at risk, if you know, if that's sort of the point at which something's escalated, reach out for help. Just that's there's, and we're going to provide some resources of places you can reach out, whether it's school, whether it's a trusted person at home. Reach out. I think Holly likely is going to speak a little bit more about kind of the stigma piece, but we've come a really long way where that pool of people where it's a safe place to bring those types of things up when we're not feeling safe has grown and grown and grown. We're not quite where we need to be, but I think we're inching towards that. So I would say keep that in mind and go to someone you trust.
Yeah.
That is really, really important. I will reiterate it because I say to all the students that I see who come through my office, there is no bad time to reach out for help. The minute it starts being a concern, the minute it starts impacting minor things like your ability to concentrate, your ability to, you know, complete tasks, or you just feel slightly confused about something, reach out. And, you know, like Sean was saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be from 0 to doctor or 0 to counselor. You have your peers, you have peer programs, you have your faculty, you know, just start by talking to somebody. Also, in having those conversations with someone, it may give you clarity that you might not have having that conversation in your head. It may be your little, young people have this amazing way of simplifying things that we overcomplicate in our own heads. But just start by talking to someone, and based on those conversations, it will then allow you at least to see whether, you know, it's enough to have had that conversation, or you do need to take that next step. But anytime it starts to have even the slightest impact on you, reach out to anyone.
Okay, so next question. Do you recommend any online platforms to talk with someone?
Yeah, I mean, one sort of benefit or good, I guess, positive side effect of the whole COVID situation that we're all dealing with is that lots of kind of resources have had to shift the way they provide services. And a lot of those services now are being offered in kind of a virtual method of some sort. So I rather than kind of overwhelming you with a whole list of a bunch, I kind of thought I'd focus on 2 that provide similar and kind of complementary types of supports. One is called Bounce Back, and it's a free skill building program available through CMHA, so the Canadian Mental Health Association. The website will be included in the package that I referred to earlier with Mena. It's designed for people who are 15 and older, who are experiencing things like low mood, could be mild to moderate depression, could be anxiety, could just be stress and worry. Like, there's not a criteria that you need some type of diagnosis of any kind to kind of seek support through Bounce Back. The form that it takes is through phone coaching. So you typically get, I think the frequency depends on kind of what you're struggling with, but it could be like weekly or bi-weekly touch points with a coach who kind of walks you through the different kind of assignments and homework that kind of goes along with it, which are like online videos and a whole bunch of kind of other tools. So it's a free resource that's sort of a coached type model. The other is called Together All. It used to be called the Big White Wall, if anyone's familiar with that terminology, but now it's called Together All. And it's essentially an online peer-to-peer support community. So we've talked a lot about like talking to peers, but we may not always have in our peer group someone we feel like mental health, for example, is something we could go to them to talk about. So this resource is really, really great because it provides kind of an online peer community. It's monitored to make sure people aren't saying things that could sort of, you know, be considered to be harmful to other people. It's fully anonymous, so you can create kind of your own, username, I guess. It's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It includes things like self-assessments and then recommends sort of resources based on those self-assessments that you complete. There's really kind of creative tools. The part that I've found really helpful for some of the clients that I've supported in other roles has been these creative tools to help you express how you feel, like how to talk to other people about how you're feeling. And even just seeing, it's sometimes there's some platforms within Together All where you can kind of see the way people have put words to how they're feeling, and it can be really helpful to kind of see other people doing that, and even just to know that you're not alone in the way that you're feeling can be helpful in and of itself. And there's also kind of self-guided courses and things that you can do, just learning about kind of different mental health related topics. But those would be kind of two important ones that I'd mention. Again, family doctors are a really good place to sometimes start, because some places do need kind of like referrals for different kind of therapy. There's lots of private therapy available, but I know that can be really expensive sometimes. So my suggestion would be to go through your school and kind of go through your, I don't know what you call your sort of student wellness department, but whatever that department is, I would encourage kind of going through your school as a place to start, because they may be able to connect you with additional resources too.
Thank you. If I can just add like a couple more to that. I think everybody in Ontario, maybe Toronto, but I think in Ontario got the bounce back flyer in the mail. They actually did send a flyer in the mail with the resources they have. They are really, really good. So I'd encourage them. To speak to what you were just saying a little earlier, at Ryerson, we do encourage you to use Keep Me Safe. Keep Me Safe, it's one of the resources that that's gonna be added to the resource list. But Keep Me Safe is access to counselors 24 hours a day, 365 days in 60 languages, wherever you are in the world. Because we do realize that some of our students are outside of Canada right now, and a lot of the services that are being offered are Canadian based. So this tool allows for you to connect with a counselor wherever you're at. Sorry, we're singing now. The other one is Good to Talk. Good to Talk is a really, really good online platform. Well, core platform, but they've also added text and virtual recently. So if you go to Good to Talk, again, it will be one of the resources made available to you. It's a post-secondary support helpline for, it's a helpline for post-secondary students. Sorry, my words are dying on me. And it helps you. Similar to that, Telehealth Ontario also has a post-secondary helpline branch to them. So if you do call Telehealth Ontario and you say, I want to speak to the mental health support for post-secondary, they can refer you to that as well. But like Sean was saying, there's a whole lot of them that are out there. Start with the resources that are provided to you, certainly through the package that I'm going to share. Part of also what I will share with you, manage to share with your groups, are some resources that are out in the community and potential costs for them. But everything you get at Ryerson is covered as part of your tuition. Once you start going outside of that, you may also now need to consider the costs associated with. I will provide you as many different resources related to, at the moment, virtual and online support as we can.
Okay, so I'll be sure to include everything in a package, just like you guys mentioned. But yeah, so moving on. Oh, those are just like a couple examples that we have at Ryerson. So that will also be included in the package. Now moving on to these. How should I deal with the stigma around mental health amongst engineering students? And how should I get over the idea that reaching out for help means I'm not good enough?
Yeah, so maybe I can speak a little bit to this. One thing that I am so passionate about is the power of stories and sharing our experiences. So your story, your experiences, maybe someone else's saving light, a message that they're not alone, and that their situation is so far from hopeless. And it can pass on useful insights as what has been helpful in your experiences or unhelpful. Which could be used to make other people feel like their experiences are a little less painful, even if what works for you doesn't work for the person who you're sharing your story with. Sharing your story with someone else can empower them to find what works for them. Sharing stories builds a sense of community, and storytelling is one of the foundations of civilization. We build community and create connections by sharing stories, especially those involving experiences with mental health. And it can spread hope. Once you tell someone You have made a declaration to another human being that you have been through something, you are still here, you are sharing, and they may see themselves in some of your experiences. The more people that start talking about mental health and share their stories, the more we can highlight how individual and personal experiences with mental health and mental distress are, and that we are all on a mental health spectrum. And it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to reach out for help if you need it. And the fear of this stigma can often delay treatment and early intervention, early getting help early on. If you're starting to feel distressed or uncomfortable, can make a dramatic difference. And sharing stories not only helps those who you're sharing the story with, but it helps you find your voice. When you tell a story, it can help you organize events that may seem chaotic in your head. And it allows you to think about the events in your life and express them in a way that is meaningful and authentic to you. And your story is yours to share with who you feel comfortable with. And your emotional resilience and your coping capacity can actually be strengthened by the realization that your story is important and that it is something that others can benefit from and you can benefit from sharing. So what I really recommend is normalizing conversations about mental health. And by doing that, we can encourage others to do the same and hopefully dismantle some of this stigma that we experience.
Look, all I can say is I've worked with, you say RESS, right? I call it RESS for a few years. Starting probably 2015, they started reaching out to us because they saw an increase, in the number of students who are actually coming to them and expressing having experienced mental health challenges of some kind. And I feel like at this point I should distinguish between mental illness and mental health. Everybody has mental health challenges. We all get stressed and anxious, overwhelmed, etc., angry, irritable, all of those things throughout the day. We don't all necessarily have a diagnosis of a mental illness. Having a diagnosis of a mental illness, however, does not mean you're not always going to cope. It just means that you're living with this extra thing and you can navigate everything that others go through, similar to everybody else. It's about, in both situations, it's about your strategies for coping and responding. So I've been working with engineering students for a while because they've made the brave step of coming up and saying, hey, this is something we struggle with. What can we do and how can we support each other in what we're going through? Like Holly says, saying it validates your experience, not just to yourself, but to somebody else who may be hearing your story, because they start to see that they're not the only ones going through it. Engineering is such a high pressure program. It isn't surprising that students may experience, like high levels of mental health, I'm going to call them challenges. Reach out for help. Your faculty has done so much work to ensure that we have supports and services available to you. It isn't an indicator that you're weak. It isn't an indicator that you're not good enough. It isn't an indicator that you don't work as hard as everybody. All the things you may be telling yourself for why you're not reaching out for help, it really isn't. And like Sean mentioned earlier, so much work has been done to kind of push or move people away from feeling like mental health challenges or even mental illness, if you have it, is a bad thing. It is an everyday thing. I mean, like, we all experience all of these things. It's just about accessing help. If you had the flu, you'd get help. If you had a headache, you'd get help. You're struggling, get help. Nobody's going to judge you for it. We're all here to support you for it. So I would really encourage you to do that. And how do you get over the idea? is just try it. I think if you try it for the first time and you see that it really isn't this scary thing, you'll get over it. And again, I think one of the main reasons why students might not have done so in the past was because there was this concern that it'll appear on an academic record, or it will be an indicator that you don't meet the mental. English is my third language, for being an engineer. It really isn't. It really isn't. If anything, I would say it's a sign that you actually know what your limits are, and it'll make you a better engineer for it, because you're allowing yourself to be mentally well and, able to do your job.
Yeah, and I love what you said about it's really part of the human experience, mental distress, mental health. It's part of the human experience. And one of the things I love about storytelling is it is transdiagnostic. You don't need a diagnosis. You can do it if you have a diagnosis. It doesn't matter. We all have these experiences. It's part of the human experience, and talking about it can really remove those barriers and shift perspectives.
Okay, so now moving on to the final segment of today, sleep and eating habits, but actually let's do sleep habits first. So the first question will be, okay, let's do this one. Should I prioritize sleep over studying? Is 4 or 5 hours a night really bad?
Yes, and no, and yes. Should I prioritize sleep over studying? Yes, definitely. Is 4 hours bad? Yes, definitely. I mean, I don't know how to say it any more definitive than that. Especially before an exam, or before you need to do a big presentation or something really, really important, prioritize sleep. A rested mind is really a sharp mind. You're able to troubleshoot better. You're able to pull out memories better. You're able to emotionally be more stable. You're able to calm yourself a lot more if, things do start to unravel around you. So yes, definitely sleep. Sleep is I would say the best medicine for any presentation you have to do, any exams you have to do, any high pressure thing you have to do the night before. 4 hours of sleep, it does not give your body enough time to do what it needs to do to repair itself for the next day. So when you're sleeping, not only does it cement all the learning and all the information that you receive during the day, but what it also does is it does things like regulate your metabolism. It rejuvenates your immune system. It also works on your hormones, and it balances out hormones. So sleeping is not just about not being tired. It's also about giving your body a chance to kind of reset and to rebuild, because some of our cells rebuild every day while we're sleeping. So yes, definitely prioritize sleep over studying, especially the nights before exams. But if you have a schedule, you will be studying during the day anyway, so that you have the time to sleep at night. And definitely try and get continuous sleep. I have students who say, well, in a 24-hour span, I do get 8 hours sleep. I get 4 in the evening and 2 there and 2 there. No, you want continuous sleep, not broken up bits of sleep. The other times when you're sleeping, you're not really doing your body any help by doing it like that. Yeah.
I'm gonna add on just like really, really quickly, because that's something I struggle with personally. So like, let's say I do have a schedule and everything. What's like the minimum amount of sleep that I could have to actually be productive? Is it 6 hours? Because 7 hours and 8 hours, that kind of takes up a lot from my time, like actually doing schoolwork and activities. So 6 hours fine, or 7 hours?
Research is actually fun. And this is, I saw a paper and I was like, no, I'm going to find more papers. I found quite a number of papers that I can send you away. And when I say a number, I'm talking about at least like 19, 20 papers that say, in terms of academics, sleeps and academics, students who tend to sleep between 7 and 9 hours tend to get better grades. And when we talk about better grades, it's the difference between like a C and an A- versus the difference between a C and a C+. It's like a significant difference when you get between 7 and 9 hours. Having said that, I think many people just physically cannot sleep 9 hours. It's like they just cannot. But if you can get at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep, that will be your best bet. When you look at it a different way, this is going to sleep at 11 and waking up at 7. that's not a really hard, I'm not asking you to go to sleep at 9 and wake up at 6. It's like 11 to 6 or 11 to 7 is usually a good window for sleeping. It does then give you 8 to 11 to study. And seriously, if you're studying that much, girl, study schedule, because within that window, you also need to be interacting with your family and friends and working out and all that kind of stuff. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Okay. I think I missed one question. 1 second. What's going on? Okay. Advice on healthy sleeping habits.
All right, I'll make this really, really quick. So when you're thinking in terms of healthy sleeping habits, we really are talking about sleep hygiene. And I would say there are like 3 main areas you want to kind of look at or address when you're thinking about healthy sleeping habits or good sleep hygiene. The first thing is your own personal habits, the things that you do prior to going to bed. I would advise trying to go to sleep at the same time and waking up at the same time as best you can. This kind of helps your body get used to things like, okay, I'm going to sleep now, I'm going to wake up now, type of thing. If you have a hard time falling asleep, if you get into the routine of going to bed at the same time, waking at the same time, it will start to kind of regulate some of that for you. So first of all, fix a bedtime when you wake up and a time when you're going to wake up. Avoid things like alcohol 4 to 6 hours before you go to bed. I know many people think that, drinking alcohol will help me go to sleep. Sure, it might do that, but alcohol also has, how can I say it? A few hours after you've gone to sleep, the alcohol levels in your body, in your blood start to fall, and then it becomes a stimulant. So it will wake you up. So it's very depressive at the beginning when you're consuming it, but that is not a long-acting thing. You will wake up, and it then becomes a stimulant. So people who drink prior to going to bed will find that they can fall asleep easy, and then a couple hours later they're awake. And they stay awake because now it's turned into a stimulant rather than a depressive. Also, when you look at things like drinking caffeine, also usually 4 to 6 hours, try to avoid doing that. I think we all know that caffeinated drinks, coffee, pop, soda, that type of stuff, eating chocolate, all of those types of things will keep you awake. So avoid stuff like that. Also avoid really, really spicy or sugary foods. They can affect, the way that you sleep, you're able to sleep. Thank you, baby. The final thing in terms of personal habits that I would say is, if you're going to exercise, try not to do it right before bed. I would even recommend not doing any exercise up to like a couple of hours before you have to go to bed, because again, exercise will invigorate your body and it'll waken you up if it's too close to bedtime. If you do it during the day, especially like in the afternoon kind of thing, that can actually help you fall asleep. So earlier in the day is good, close to bedtime, not so good. The other area you may want to think about or working on in terms of sleep habits is your environment, your sleep environment. So try have a comfortable bed. I know sometimes it's easier said because mattresses are ridiculous expensive sometimes, but using a comfortable bed is really key to having good night's sleep. If you're on a bed that's soft and you prefer hard, it usually will affect how you sleep. So evaluate whether or not your bed is potentially the problem, and if it's impacting your sleep. Cool room is usually the best room for sleep. So find a comfortable temperature setting for you to sleep. If you go to sleep in a warm bedroom, you're likely going to get hot and it's going to wake you up or keep you awake. So try keep your room cool. And as best you can, avoid things that make noise. So phones tend to buzz. I know we have our phones near us. They have a low level buzz that goes on. Some people like white noise. If you're going to have white noise, try to have it. Try have white noise that is not distracting. So things that have words in it or a tune that you can sing along to, because you'll end up focusing on that rather than going to sleep. And as best you can, reserve your bed for sleep and being intimate. Don't use your bed as your study area, as your workspace or your recreation space. Your body needs to be able to kind of distinguish between this is where I sleep and this is where I play. So as best you can, within the environment where you're sleeping, make sure your bed is comfortable, ensure that the temperature is nice and cool, keep any distracting noises away, and use your bed for sleeping if you can. Then the last thing is when you're getting ready to bed, try and again develop a routine or a habit to try and trigger your mind to go to sleep. So if you require one, have a light snack before bed. Warm milk usually is good, or foods that are high in amino acids like bananas. They may help you fall asleep. Practice relaxation techniques before bed. So whether it's a little bit of yoga, breathing exercises, mindfulness, all of that will start to help to reduce your anxiety and to start to calm you down, so that when you go to sleep, you're going to sleep in almost like a calm state. As best you can, don't take your worries to bed. I always try and schedule worry time within my day, where I dedicate that time to worrying about whatever it is I need to worry about, so that when you're going to bed, you're not really worrying and thinking, etc., because all that thinking you're doing is what's going to keep you awake. If you can, establish a pre-sleep routine. Some people will take a warm bath just before, some people will read just before. Whatever your pre-bed routine is, do that. And the final thing is get into your favorite sleeping position. If you know you sleep on your stomach, when you get into bed, kind of sleep on your stomach as compared to your side, because that comfort of being in the position that helps you to sleep will kind of help you fall asleep a little bit quicker. The last thing that I will say is sometimes we do get up in the middle of the night, or we cannot go to sleep right away. If that happens, rather than stay and ruminate, if you find you've been awake for like 15-30 minutes, get up and get out of bed, go and get a glass of water, get out of bed, leave the room, read for a little bit, sit in a quiet room or something, and then return to bed. That should help to settle you down again and get you to sleep. But trying to continue to force yourself to fall asleep, it's not really going to happen. So I hope that's helpful. Lots of information there. I hope that's helpful.
Actually, the only thing I knew was the whole cold room thing. That was the only, yeah. So that's definitely very helpful.
Cool, not cold. If it's cold, then it's
just like the window open, but yeah, that definitely helps a lot. But thank you. Okay, so we went over this. Now eating habits. So this is a screenshot from the responses. So very unhealthy. It's like a, what's the word? Okay, whatever. Just like a parabola? Is that what it's, okay, moving on. Moving on. How to deal with stress eating, binge eating, not eating enough, and weight fluctuating. That's a very dense question. So
Yeah, so this happens to be an area. So most of my clinical experience actually comes in working as a behavior therapist in an adolescent, kind of young adult eating disorder program. So this happens to be an area of passion of mine. So I'm going to try to be concise. I'm going to first be critical of even just that scale there. I want to be really cautious and kind of encourage people to use words, to not use words like healthy and unhealthy when they think about food. I think right off the hop, that sets us up for failure in a lot of ways, but I'll kind of talk about that in a second. But really, this challenge is something I think, again, I just kind of want to normalize it. This is something that many people struggle with. And really, if I can give the most general piece of advice would be learn to listen to your body, learn to kind of follow your body's kind of internal cues rather than having the environment around you or external cues kind of drive when it's time to eat. I know myself, kind of a trigger point for me is often when I hear the bump with the Netflix. When Netflix shows up on my screen, something in me decides I need to eat, even if I've just eaten. There's something about sort of those kind of external cues that kind of trigger, like, it's snack time. When is it really? Maybe it is. Maybe that's what my body needs in that moment, but maybe it's not actually what it needs. So just kind of being mindful of those external cues and not to rely on those, really to rely on what your body's telling you. Try to structure your meals within reason. So not to be too rigid about it, but kind of know in advance, maybe what you're going to eat and when you're going to eat, rather than kind of, again, I'm guilty of this, kind of mindlessly kind of letting the environment kind of guide. Oh, that looks good. I want to try that. Or I'm bored, those kinds of things. So really kind of trying to stick to a structure, but within reason that allows for flexibility. A great resource, which I'll kind of wrap up with kind of going through a few of kind of the main principles that this resource talks about. It's called Intuitive Eating, and I think I included a link to that website, and there's a book specifically that I find really helpful by Evelyn Tribble and Elise Resch are their names. They're both dietitians, but they really talk about the idea of kind of like binge eating, or not eating enough, or kind of fluctuating weight in a really, really helpful way, and frame it, rather than thinking of healthy eating, think of it as like intuitive eating, really listening to your body. And the main 10 principles are rejecting the diet mentality. What we know about dieting, like evidence will say this diet over this diet over that diet. That's mostly what you'll find. But really overall, what the literature shows on dieting is that it actually causes people to gain weight. It has the opposite effect. That the diet culture kind of lies to us and has led us to getting this cycle of like, I do this, it doesn't work, therefore I failed. And then there's like shame and guilt that goes along with it. And it's this kind of never-ending cycle. So rejecting the diet mentality is a big one. Honoring your hunger is another one. Making sure that your body is fueled for the really tough crap we have to do every day. You guys are busy, we are busy, and the world demands a lot of us. And to make sure your body is fueled for the things you need. If you are depriving yourself of things like energy, like carbohydrates, you are depriving your body of what it needs to be fueled to do the things that it needs to do. The third is making peace with food. And making peace with food really goes along with that idea of there isn't really good and bad. That's not a way to kind of think about food. It's that there are times where, indulging is fine, and times where you want to kind of make sure the choices that you're making, again, are what's fueling your body. And we know that the things that tend to fuel your body better are the things that would be traditionally considered to be more healthy. So of course, that's a good guideline to follow. Challenging the food police. Again, this idea of good and bad foods. The food police has created these unreasonable rules about what our bodies need. And I think social media has fueled that. The diet culture has fueled that. The next one is discovering kind of the satisfaction factor. As Holly mentioned, not about food earlier, but about a different topic. We as humans have centered our lives around food. And in some ways that's good. So some ways that's bad, but in a lot of ways that's good. Like, get back to kind of the enjoyment of the things we're eating, and being really mindful about the food we're taking in, and the purpose it kind of serves. And you'll find that it helps you kind of identify what is the right amount of food for you, which leads to the next kind of principle, which is feeling your fullness. So really recognizing what truly being full means, that eating to the point of complete satiation is likely not a helpful tool, but eating to the point where you've fueled your body enough that you actually recognize what it feels like to feel the right amount of full, would be one good strategy. Coping with your emotions with kindness. Often things like food restriction, when we don't eat enough, when we don't fuel our bodies the way they need to be fueled, that actually itself leads to a lot of some of the mental health challenges, and the, like Holly mentioned, with the whole reptilian brain. Our brains revert. We can't do what we normally can do when we're restricting our bodies of either what it's used to, or what it actually needs to do tough things. Another one is respecting your body, feeling good about who you are, and that every body type deserves dignity. Every body type is valuable, and there is no wrong. We are all built differently, and kind of respecting your body is a really important piece. Movement. So we often, when we think of exercise, this might in a way kind of touch on the next topic a little bit, but when we think about exercise, we often think of like really intensive things that are going to kind of make us burn the most amount of calories at once. But really, when it comes to kind of related to eating, I guess, is just do something that helps you just feel better or feel different. So sometimes just a walk helps you just feel better about yourself. Just knowing that you've gotten fresh air, that you've checked something out other than your apartment or your house. And the last is honoring your health, and the idea of kind of gentle nutrition. being gentle to yourself, and eating things that yes, feel good, but that don't necessarily lead to kind of health complications and all that kind of stuff. But being mindful of your health and having that kind of at the back of your mind. Of course, that's important. But this idea that one unhealthy snack or one unhealthy meal is going to sort of change the whole trajectory of your health, that's a really unhealthy way of thinking. And it traps us in this cycle of doing it over and over again. And it actually defeats the purpose. So the book does an amazing job of elaborating on everything I've just said, and I'm totally stealing all of this from them. But when I worked in that program, this was the tool we use for both ends of kind of the eating disorder spectrum, whether you're restricting or whether you're kind of overeating. And it's a really, really helpful resource. I cannot recommend it enough for any types of eating type challenges. It really helps you develop a brand new relationship with food that I think is probably really has really evolved into something very unhealthy for most of us, just the actual relationship with food itself.
Thank you for that. So much covered. Wow. Okay. So I'll be sure to include that also in the book that they'll be given out. So now I think this is the last question. How do I find the motivation to be active when all the gyms are closed?
Yeah, so I love what you said, Sean, about movement. And really thinking about what our goals are for movement. And one thing that I've kind of learned throughout the pandemic and things like that is the way that I define exercise is very different now. So I used to have very strict expectations of exercise, and but I realized that I don't enjoy picking up weights and putting them down. That's not my jam. It's not what I want to do. It's not what feels good to me. And I found myself kind of falling into some really significant self-judgment about body image and things like that. So I really thought about my relationship with exercise and what are my goals? And my goals are to feel good in my body. And the way that I found that I can achieve that is feeling good is through dance. And I'm not a dancer like by training or any of that, but I just find dance is a way that that movement feels really authentic to me and I feel good in my body. So what I would like to suggest is find what kind of movement feels good for you. Maybe it's going out and kicking a soccer ball around or throwing a ball for your dog or going for a walk. It doesn't have to be, it may be picking up weights and putting them down, but it doesn't have to be. And another thing is we all have different abilities. We all have different strengths. So really think about what exercise means to you. And exercise is really about moving what you've got. And if moving your body isn't, or in a certain way isn't possible for you or isn't what feels good to you, moving your brain is a worthwhile endeavor as well. And exercising your cognitive muscles is a worthwhile endeavor as well. So I would recommend two things is redefining exercise and what that means for you, and moving what you've got in a way that feels authentic can really, and through moving authentically, it's going to feel good and you're going to want to do it. So that motivation will come back. Thank you.
That's great. If I could add my 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents, I think oftentimes when we talk about movement, when you talk about eating, it's all attached to body image. It's all attached to the current social standards of what good looks like. And I want to say again, be kind to yourself, love yourself, how you look, where you look, all that kind of stuff. That's who you are. Holly, I like that whole, I've learned to redefine who you are. A real reality is COVID has had a hit on lots of people. You don't look how you looked at the beginning. And you know what? So what? We literally have gone through this entire year of, I don't know what to even call last year, but okay. What I'm trying to say is, one, all the images that we look at and think I want to aspire to be like. Remember what I said earlier, you don't know their lives. If you're trying to be like a celebrity, they have chefs, they have workout people. Some of them are genetically small. There's a whole bunch of information about them that we don't have, that we don't know. So we should not really aspire to be like them. That's their life. What is yours? the other thing that I also want to say is a lot of our eating and our workout and everything is guided by standards, and those standards have guidelines. They are guidelines. They are not policies. They're not black and white. They just give you general ideas of what you should be trying to do in order to maintain health and well-being. Remember that sometimes the thing that restricts you is something outside of your control. You may not have enough money. You may not have access. You may not have an ability. All of those things are just part of who we are as people. Sometimes it's part of our lives. So rather than say I'm a terrible person because I cannot work hard, feed myself, feed my kids, in a certain way because it doesn't meet the standard, remember it's a guide. If you can't eat 5 fruits and vegetables, you know what? And you can only eat 2, yay, you ate 2. Guidelines say work out for 30 minutes. If you can't work out for 30 minutes and you can do it for 5, kudos, you did that. But I think what you were saying, Holly, is it's really, really important right now to just look at what makes me happy and go with that. What do I enjoy doing and go with that? Don't starve yourself, because your eating kind of regulates things like your thinking, your energy levels, your ability to do things. Rather than starving yourself, eat in moderation and eat across all the food groups, if you like, within whatever culture and type of food that you like to eat. I think that's the other thing that we almost always miss when you're looking at stuff like the food guide. Everyone is stuck on, well, it's westernized. Yeah, they have some for other cultures too. And they're not saying cook Western food. They're just saying within your diet, try and include all of these varieties of foods. And I think that's really the approach we need to have. In terms of gym and working out and motivation, I go with do the things you like. Similar to you, Holly, I have made people rich with gym memberships that I've never attended to. But I will pay for a squash club because I know 4 or 5 days of the week I'll go and play squash. I'll play for a tennis club because 4 or 5 days of the week I'll go and play tennis. I paid years of gym membership and I think I lifted weights maybe a week in years because I hate doing that. I also feel intimidated by all those people who are doing this and looking at themselves in the mirror, and all those people who can run circles for miles and miles and miles. I'm not one of those things. So what is it that you like? And do that, because if you find stuff you like, you'll find that you do more of it. Yesterday, I was out with my daughter and we ran from one tree to the wall and back again for like 10 minutes. That's working out. It doesn't have to be major. It doesn't have to be big. You just want to incorporate movement into your day, and you'll find that, you know, it gets easier to do that. And when you get bored with it, you challenge yourself a little bit more, and that's the extent of what it needs to do. We can't all have, you know, 6, 7, 8, 10 abs. We can't all be thin. We can't all be, you know, so who are you? Be happy within yourself and work towards, you know, just being your happy, true, authentic self, whatever that looks like. And I know we live in a world where the outside influences what we think about ourselves on the inside. But, you know, if I have a closing message for everybody, it's like, just be who you are as best you can and live the best way you can, looking after yourself. Things will fall into place. If you eat right and you feel like you're a little bit bigger, it will fall into place if you eat right and you move a little bit more. It doesn't have to be, you know, strict and all that kind of stuff. We need to be kind to ourselves. We've had a really rough year. We all need to be kind to ourselves and remember that, you know, one day at a time, we'll get through it.
Oh my God. Okay, so I think this is it. Thank you so much, Holly, Sean, and Juanita, for coming. Yeah, this is super beneficial. We went over so many things. But yeah, this is basically that. Thank you for your time. Yeah.
You'll be okay. I think if you walk away from this with nothing else, just remember that, you know, you'll be okay. Even if things don't go the way you wanted them to, put them into context, see how we can help you fix it. If you don't know how to, certainly reach out to me in my office. We can help you figure some of that kind of stuff out, but you'll be okay. We'll get through this. We'll get through this.
I'll put all the resources and everything on the pamphlet that I'm going to give out. So that is that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Holly, Sean, so nice to meet you. Virtually meet you.